Okay, so welcome to the Half-Hearted Podcast episode. I believe this is 5. I'm gonna have to stop doing this if I'm gonna plan. I'm gonna mentally have to keep track of everyone that I'm doing.
We don't have time for numbers.
Yeah, my guest today, all the way from sunny Santa Rosa, California. One of my best and oldest friends. He's a graphic designer, digital illustrator. Singer, songwriter.
Yep.
Yeah, you draw with your actual hands too. Singer, songwriter, guitar player, and also, because we're going to talk about it, the perpetrator of the Strymon Parallax hoax. I think people in the guitar world will want to know. I think I feel like it's a thing.
Behind the scenes. Yeah,
you were behind it. So we have not spoken to each other in a while. I actually I don't know if you listened to my the podcast I did with Hillary, but I talk about how much I hate Christian Cafe.
Yeah, it's wow, that was a fun one. That was a fun place to be. Like before internet dating was remotely socially acceptable.
Oh yeah, way before. Yeah. And so yeah, I talked about how Christian Cafe. I said my buddy got my buddy met his wife on Christian Cafe, and they are divorced. And then she took my good friend and moved him to California full time, and I never saw him again. So, well, here we go.
It was my choice. It wasn't her fault.
It's fair. That's fair. I mean,
and,
it's your fault.
I was starting to think like maybe I made a big mistake moving here when like fire season became a thing.
Yeah.
Like in 2017, there was a big fire and then they just keep happening. But you guys caught that this past year. So I'm feeling a little bit better with my choices.
I know. That's I was saying for a while when the wildfires were happening, I was like, do you think when people from Hamilton walk outside, they're like, what is that lovely aroma?
Yeah.
That smells incredible.
Someone barbecuing?
So I don't know. I'm not exactly sure where to start with you because I know this is kind of like my podcast talking to people about spiritual backgrounds. I'm not sure if you want to dive into that
Honestly,
away, or if you just want to talk about like where you are now, like what's going on, like you're.
Yeah, we can get into everything, and I'm super happy to talk about like what my spiritual journey has been up till now, for sure.
Yeah, well, and because I think when you first kind of entered that transition, or at least when I started to notice it happening in you, I think, if for lack of a better term, I feel like you probably had a little obstinance and defensiveness in your attitude. And I feel like I'm happy to be talking to you about it now more deeply when you've had time to kind of process it a little, because at least for me, I'm kind of in a process. I'm in the middle of it, wherever it is that I end up. I'm kind of in the middle of it, but I'm just so fascinated by it. So why don't you give your own background? But I know the Coles knows, which is that you were essentially raised in the church. Your dad is not only a pastor, but was a pastor, but also like a Bible college professor. So it was in your life from jump. So why don't you tell me why don't you tell me your background in it?
Sure. So, pastor's kid, lived in the house behind the church. And so I was very much, and I wasn't like the cliche pastor's kid that like rebels and like does their own thing. Like I was very committed. I really, believed it. I feel like I was in full possession of my own spiritual choices, that I agreed with all of the doctrine, and was steeped in it. I mean, led worship team and went to youth group and, did all the things. I was celibate till I got married. Like I was very fundamentalist in my views, and I'm not entirely sure why things started to shift. I reached a moment where I had to confront some cognitive dissonance that I had. On the one hand, I was a big fan of science, like always loved space, love vaccines, we have clearly the scientific method is useful as a tool to understand how the universe works and to subjugate it to our whims. There's a there. But for me, I wasn't able to, when it came to cosmology and origin of life, it was like, no, this was all made in 6 days and the Big Bang is bullshit.
So well, that is like one of the funniest parts of like our history was because I remember you were the one that introduced me to Ken Hovind.
Yeah.
And I remember that we were in the basement, and I remember, do you remember this moment where I was like, wait, Christians don't believe in evolution? And you were like, no, like I was the idiot.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to feel ashamed, right?
That was, we've learned, we've grown a little bit. But that was really the thing for me. I was like, I just out of hand was dismissive of these whole branches of science based on no real knowledge of them, like just because that's what our tribe had agreed upon. And so what I did was, and I was watching a bunch of videos of like Dawkins and Hitchens and Daniel Dennett, like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, so to speak. Of the new atheism. I was watching debates to be better at debating as a Christian. And then after watching,
and we as a friendship group were all into it for like we were all into big apologetics, time. Almost more than I cared about enriching my own faith. I was like, I want to be able to destroy other people.
Yeah, and that's great. Like, that's totally what society needs. But it was around that time where I was like, well, these guys are smart. Maybe I'm missing out on something. And there was a moment where I just I gave myself permission to separate my ideas from my identity. And I think that really is the crux of it. Because growing up fundamentalist, growing up as a pastor's kid he was also a seminary professor, it was an environment of debate and free thought, which is great. And I think that free thinking is what allowed me to change my views. But it was really about debate and like being right and being able to defend your position and being super rational. And so being wrong or having to say I don't know wasn't an option. I need an answer. I need to fill in the blank with an answer.
Well, and I'm sure. Sorry, this is going to happen a lot on a Skype call. No. But I think also presumably, this is what I assume. Your dad is not a dumb guy.
Oh no,
right? And so your dad knew what he was talking about. Unlike, I'm assuming, a lot of other Christian parents, is because the Bible said so. Your dad knew the arguments and on the Christian side and could articulate them very well.
Yeah, I mean, he taught apologetics, which is like the art and science of defending the faith. I mean, taught Greek and Hebrew, so it could go back to the original text. Like, it was a very studious environment where it wasn't. There was a rational basis or a seeming rational basis for belief. And so when I gave myself permission to go, it's okay to be wrong and it's okay to say I don't know. That kind of laid the groundwork for me to actually begin to shift my views. And the first thing that contributed to my deconversion was watching a video series on YouTube from some Catholic guy talking about why Catholics believe in the Big Bang. And so that was an easy jump for me to make, where I'm like, this isn't about Jesus. This isn't about the Bible. This is about the denomination I happened to be raised in. If a billion Christians around the world, the prevailing denomination in Christendom is okay with this view of cosmology, well, I can be too. And so that was the thing, the crack that opened the dam, where I was able to question more things. And then I was able to look a little bit more honestly at things like prayer, and like prayer is really important. And I still believe, I'm an agnostic now, but I still believe spiritual practices are very important when they're kept at the individual level. So I think prayer can be important as a way of like orienting intention or whatever, but as some kind of like wish fulfillment thing that you're gonna get what you want from Sky Daddy, that doesn't seem to make sense. And one of the things that kind of drove that home for me is the fact that there's just certain things we never prayed about. Like, we'd always like pray about things like maybe heal this guy from cancer, or maybe help this person get their bills paid, things that could like be resolved on their own. We never pray to raise people from the dead. We never pray to regrow limbs, because we know, despite how much faith we claim to have, like, God's not going to show up that way. He's not. And so it was just like one belief after another until I got to a point where I just didn't see the value in having a relationship with a personal God, and just came to believe that wasn't even possible, whether or not he exists. I just didn't see that evidenced in my life. Stepping back, uncoupling my ideas from my identity, and allowing myself to say, I don't know.
And how long did you sit on that? Because I remember this moment really well, where you were going after somebody on Facebook, and I just sent you a message that was kind of curt at the time. It was,
Sure.
How long have you been a closet atheist? And
Right.
and you were like, a little while now, and it wasn't surprising, but how what were you in, like, aside from where you were in your like emotional spiritual space at the time, but where were you in the sense of like, okay, I'm at this place, like, and you sat on it, which meant you didn't feel safe to talk about it. So like talk about that.
Yeah.
Admitting on my own end that I was probably at that time not the person that you would want to talk to it about.
Sure. And yeah, because, everyone has their own journey, and the points at which we are at in those journeys might have rubbed up against each other. And yeah, for me, I mean, it really was like a kind of death to me, right? Like my whole frame of reference for reality is on the backdrop of this, this person who's deeply invested in my life, who's paying attention, who has my back, like who's willing to let me make some mistakes and willing to let me get hurt, but is ultimately going to like be there to protect me and redeem me and make it all make sense. And so that exercise of saying goodbye to that person, and to that mode of thinking is intense. And so it took a few years. I would say like the intellectual portion happened more quickly than the emotional side, where I really had to let my feelings catch up with that, because it really is like a visceral thing. Where I would say that when I was a believer, I had a physical sense that there was a God presence around me. And so, I would say it took maybe 3 years to kind of complete that journey. But after that point, there's this extra layer of not wanting to like lose your friendships, right? Like in my marriage at the time, I'm sure my partner at the time knew that. So like she was the one who asked me at some points, like, do you even believe this anymore? But admitting that to your social network, and then dealing with the potential fallout of that, is like this other layer that is totally separate from your own internal journey. And so, I think we all hide in different ways from people. And that was a really big thing to keep hidden, because everybody in my life, at least at the time, had some kind of spiritual journey. Yes. Some relationship to the Christian God, that it felt like too costly to just put that out there. I don't obviously care now, but at the time it was,
Shoot, I have two places that I want to go. I'm not sure which one to go with first, but I think it was, since you spoke about your marriage, we'll go there. And I just want to hear your response to this, which is that what a lot of Christians would say is that when somebody's in a bad relationship, or they want to justify doing something that they biblically couldn't justify, that they deconvert, and that we love this term, change your creed to fit your conduct.
Right.
And I think, at least at the time, it ran through my mind, and I was just curious how you would respond to that. Yeah.
So, relationships are complicated, and, that was a relationship I needed to be in. We were married for 14 years, and that was a relationship I needed to be in for that time. And certainly, people have way more dysfunctional relationships than that one was. I mean, I think it was just, like any other relationship. And for me, that wasn't really a factor, because my deconversion happened quite a bit before that relationship came to an end. So I think it was maybe easier to decide to end a marriage, because there wasn't that extra layer of like disappointing some omnipotent, judge. But I don't think that my deconversion was some way make it easier to leave a relationship. That wasn't really on my radar at all. That wasn't part of that wasn't my goal. I mean, that wasn't what I wasn't looking for an out. It just, the relationship did end, but yeah, certainly wasn't part of the deconversion. I think those are two very separate things.
Okay. I've always been curious about this. I don't think I've ever really like asked you, but like for lack of a better term, you are living your Christian life, going to youth group, and then Jason Rainville pops into youth group in grade 13 or OAC for any Americans who might be watching this.
Don't embarrass us in front of our American audience.
I don't know. I liked having OAC was like my best year of high school. I had a blast, but like I burst in there and I'm like, what's going on? I did 10 grams of magic mushrooms and met the guy. And honestly, I'm the thing that kind of shocked me was that when I told Christians about this experience and they were fascinated. And what the thing that took me aback was like, how do I have a deeper or how do I have an experience like this and you don't? You've been here from the beginning. I was curious, like, what was your perception of me and particularly my story at that time?
You know, I think I always was a little bit like, are you sure you met Jesus? Are you?
Well, I think I would have told you at the time that it was definitely not specifically Jesus, but it was definitely God.
Right. Yes. And so, you know, there was some part in you reaching out to something, and you're more likely to land on like the prevailing belief system around you because that's what you grab first. I mean, maybe if you had met a really great Buddhist friend, you would have gone that direction. I didn't have too many thoughts about it beyond the fact that it's fascinating. And also, just with the belief system, I was like, well, of course that's where you met Jesus because he knew where you were at and he showed up where you were and he just picked the right moment. So it didn't strike me as odd at all. I just thought it was, there's many paths to truth, I think. Yeah.
So I think when we were in your deconversion stage, would you have said at that time you were an atheist?
I've never said that I'm an atheist. I mean,
Okay.
I just think it's a question that I'm comfortable having no answer. I'm comfortable not picking a side. I think it's irrelevant to our life on Earth. There's no way I could claim that there's like not some higher power, just as I can't claim that there's not some super intelligence that's running a simulation. Like certainly that's possible, but I just don't think it's relevant. It doesn't, I think we have a lot more, we'd be better served focusing our attention on like the more concrete things that we can actually have access to with our senses and with our minds, as opposed to stuff that really has no basis other than just what other humans have made up. Like there's nothing we can point to have any real objective. And it's funny, like I often think there was a blog that we both kind of participated in, Keith's blog.
Yeah.
Just how much it's so interesting to me, just like how much time and energy gets spent with debating these abstract theological concepts from like two people who are conceivably have equal access to the Holy Spirit and to the Word of God, and can land on completely different sides of a topic. Like where is that mechanism through which the Holy Spirit is bringing people together to better understand him and believe in truth? Because believing in truth, believing the right thing was kind of a core tenet of the worldview. So why can't any of us agree on any of this stuff? There's just no. So I think about those conversations and how heady they were and how deep they were, but how substanceless they were, because there's nothing that we're able to hook any of those things on apart from tricks of language and our ability to dance in debate. There's no empirical anything that we're able to hook anything onto. So I think we're much better served focusing there. So I've never called myself an atheist. I just think the question's completely irrelevant.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that because it's we did have these long, deep discussions, but not everybody agreed about everything, and I'm not sure that we ever like walked away with anything significant. It was like I think it's like we largely walked away feeling more secure in our own team. But yeah, it's not necessarily so. It's funny that you say that, because you said the crack happened from the science part for you, which I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Because the crack that happened for me that started the dominoes rolling to where I am now was the hell thing. So have we talked about this? Because I feel like we haven't really talked about this, and I'm not sure if this happened. If we talked about this before you left, because I'm not sure if it did, but I was listening to this podcast. It was called the Bad Christian Podcast, and it's run by guys in the band called Emery. Have you ever heard? Do you know Emery?
Not ringing a bell.
They were like a less good Under Oath.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, locked and loaded. But they had this guy on named Chris Date, and Chris Date runs a website called Rethinking Hell, and basically he was a proponent of annihilationism.
Right.
Do you recall what that is? Yeah. And that blew my mind, because I heard a debate that he went on the Unbelievable podcast and debated Al Mohler, who, if you'll recall, is like a huge figure in evangelicalism. And Chris Date, the guy that no one's ever heard of, destroyed him, like, pardon the pun, right? Like, absolutely, like, mopped the floor with this guy, like machine gunned him with verses. And Al Mohler's responses were, well, that's just not the traditional understanding of those verses. I'm like, what? That's not an argument at all.
That's not good enough. Yeah.
No, that's not good enough. But what it not only did I change my position on it, but it made me think, because Chris Date, I don't know where he's at now. I've never talked to the guy, but he was saying that because I hold this view, I can't belong to certain churches. I can't become a pastor in certain churches. I can't be a member of certain churches simply because I hold this view. And I'm like, this is the right one. If you want to be ultra biblical, this is the right one. And the majority, the traditional view, I think is wrong. What else is wrong with it? Right? Yeah. And I'm just wondering, in addition to this, the science part for you, but also, was there biblical stuff that you were started to unpack as well?
I mean, there's definitely the science thing was open the door, but at some point you come up against your conception of like who this God is supposed to be, and like it's not good. Like he's not a nice guy. And like the amount of just like carnage and waste that this like all-knowing, all-powerful, and that like logical inconsistency really, it's funny to hear Christians talk around it like, well, God gave us free will, but he had to give us room to choose him, and like, yeah, he's all-powerful, but it's complicated. Like, it's not complicated.
Or like the fact that some Christians would have to say, like, it was actually great that the Israels took those women and children as slaves, because they would have been screwed otherwise, because we also killed all their men.
It was a nice genocide. But it was a nice one. It was it makes.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, no, it's just like how much waste, how many souls are being created and just to be like annihilated or like sent to eternal punishment. And like that view of hell is a medieval concept. That's not really even from the Bible. But it just, at some point I had to confront the fact that this like God who I had believed in, the way that he was presented to me, was a horrible person. And so at some point, confronting the biblical issues themselves, but also like I think by that point in my journey, what the Bible had to say was irrelevant. Like, it's just, I think like one of the things that actually contributed to my change of heart was just learning a bit more about biblical authors and what we know by doing textual analysis, to be like, the book of Isaiah was written by like 4 different guys over hundreds of years. Like, and you can tell by the names for God that get used, like what political purpose that was serving. So it's like, this Isaiah guy is not a guy. He's people. He is I mean, it's a political tool, like just like the way evangelicalism is essentially indistinguishable from republicanism in the States for the most part. It was a political tool then. And so that component, at some point, I just didn't care what the Bible had to say. It's just stuff that people wrote, you know?
Yeah. Do you see the Bible as having so would you disagree with the assertion that the Bible, say not literally true, but still occupies some sort of like important social historical place in our culture and society? Because all to say, like, I feel like I would rather live in the Bible-centered societies than, say, the Quran-centered societies.
Yeah, I think that really has a lot more to do with like social conditions than anything else. I mean, when you look at how things are kind of backsliding socially in the States, I don't think like religion is predominantly responsible. It's a tool for control, but I think it's the social factors or economic factors that really have more to do with that than whether it's the Quran or the Bible. I mean, certainly like some worldviews are more insidious. Some lean further into cruelty. I think Christianity can be pretty cruel and insidious too. So
it's had its moments.
It certainly has its moments. But I think there's other factors that probably have more to do with it. But yeah, I mean, like historically, of course, the Bible. I mean, how can you get away from the importance of the Bible historically? I mean, it's like shaped all of art history up until the modern age. Like it's shaped our calendar. Like it's like, you know. But I think we need to contextualize it better.
Because and this is kind of pointing to where I am now, which is the sense of like I there's something about Jesus that I can't let go of, man. I don't know what it is, but at the same time, it's like this whole attitude within evangelicalism of like hard Bible literalism. I'm like, I don't know, man. And like, and this is what I say. A lot of comics will ask me, like, do you still call yourself a Christian? And what I've been saying is, I would still say that I'm a Christian, but I don't know if other Christians would. And like, right. And it's like, how much of like, because I'm at this place, it's like, how bad about myself do I need to feel? Right. Because I could always, could always be reading the Bible more. I could always be thinking, what would Jesus do more? There's no end to how much better that I could be. And how much do I need to like, because like, I'm not a reader, like, let alone the Bible. I'm not like a huge reader as it is. And I feel like in order to be in the church, you need to like have like a hobby as being like a Bible scholar. And that's just like, not me. And like, and how much do I need to care? How much does Job really need to have existed? And like, and then by whose standard am I still a Christian or not? And I don't know. This is the stuff that I wrestle with and I don't really know what to do with.
I think for your comedy career, you should feel as bad about yourself as possible because that's where we're gonna get.
That's where the jewel. That's where the gold.
That's where the real. Yeah, that's where the good shit is. No, I think. So here's the thing, and this is another reason why I'm cool remaining at the level of agnostic and also not debating. Like I'm not interested in debating Christians now that I'm on the other side. I'm like, well, no, like. I think spirituality is deeply important and spirituality can look all sorts of ways. So I'm a sensualist. I get deep satisfaction out of being intentional with sensory experience, whether that's really paying attention to a meal, whether that's really paying attention to like a song and understanding how those sounds come together to create an emotional space. Like that's always been, even as a Christian, like deeply important to me. And I feel like I can meet God, so to speak, through those moments. But for some people, that looks like Jesus. For some people, that looks like astrology and looking up to the stars. The problem for me comes where someone uses their system of making sense of the world as a tool to control other people and becomes like an ought. You ought to do this. That's where I have a problem with it. I don't. If Jesus helps you make sense of existence and helps you navigate the world and gives you peace, so long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting other people, it doesn't matter. Like it's all internal and we're kind of these walking, mythologies. Like we're, the main character in our own story. Like we're just like, none of this is objective experience. This is all this real smushy synthesis of like an external world we don't actually directly access. it's all fantasy. And so I think there's some level of fantasy that is okay for us to indulge if it helps us make sense of the universe, because otherwise the universe is this big, cold, uncaring place. And that's a lot. The psychological load of that is a lot for, like Basil, a friend of ours. We talk about religion. We don't really debate about it because we're not going to get anywhere, but we've had some really good conversations around it. And we can reach a point of agreement there because we've each landed on things that help us make sense of everything. And there's enough overlap where we can still have meaningful exchange. And it's okay if we disagree on other points. Like that's, I'm comfortable, not winning people to my point of view, which is, I think, a big thing that's changed in my older years.
I have not talked to Basil in a while. I feel bad. In your Christian life, what would you say was your most significant, like, spiritual experience?
Oh man. It was usually worship music related. And so this is the thing that I would love to figure out is church is a really important social institution. Like, especially the church that I grew up in, it was very multicultural. It cut across every social class. And those two things are like super important in this like moment we're having in America and have been having, trying to understand each other and have empathy and not be so tribalistic. Going to a church with like rich and poor and people from around the world gave me a much richer view of humanity. There was a focus on charity. There's a focus on like universal ideals that unite us and kind of a shared sense of purpose. If people were down on their luck, they could get some of their needs met. And collective singing as well. You think about people singing in pubs in the days of yore, whenever that was. In church, like going to concerts, like there's something about collective singing that is, I think, inherently spiritual, whether or not the content is spiritual. And for me, I think a lot of those mountaintop spiritual experiences happened in worship. So I'm kind of have been grieving the loss of that institution, like a place where those things are all facilitated. I would love to find some alternative, but
it almost makes you envy, because I don't know if you've heard about this phenomena about like atheists who go to church. They're like, I don't think it's literally real, but like I like hanging out with people and I like the songs, and I feel like because they're atheists, they don't have the negative history or associations with church, so they can just go and kind of enjoy it. Whereas like with I've done karaoke a few times over the last like couple months. Nice. I don't know if you've seen the clips on Instagram. Hey, I rocked Enter Sandman. I crushed it. I just want to say.
Which account are you posting those on? I haven't seen this.
My comedy one, but they're like stories, so they don't like stick around.
Okay.
But there was something in those experiences where I was at karaoke even, and we're singing all the same songs together that felt like we were doing this like as a community, even though I didn't know anybody there, but we were there together doing it. And there was something that like fed my soul about it. Right. Whereas like, but then when I go to church and I don't know, it doesn't feel the same. Yeah. It doesn't feel as like organic.
No, there's stuff that they just don't talk about at church because it's just like God's the answer for everything. But like, we're mammals. Like our biology or physiology works certain ways. So when you're in a room with other people and there's a rhythm that's like harmonizing all of your individual bodies, there's a thing that happens. Like, and that's the thing. I think that church could be much more powerful if it wasn't so hyper-focused on the superstitious and hyper-focused on the supernatural. Leave some room for those, but there's a lot of power in paying attention to like our physical selves and how we work. Like I said, I'm a sensualist. So like paying attention to sense, paying attention to how we're feeling in our bodies. I think we can do, there's a whole wooey side to that. I'm not very wooey, but there is some truth and merit in paying attention to that physical component, which is so often at odds with what the church is talking about. Like, no, we're dirty, we're sinful. We need to transcend the physical. We don't need to take like meds for mental health issues. We need to pray more. Like, no, you're a sack of organs and those organs work in particular way. Let's leave some room for that. Let's engage ourselves in the physical as well. Yeah. So I'd love to see a different kind of church. That'd be great.
Yeah. You know who else did? Joseph Smith.
I love that, man.
You know what podcast I'm actually like obsessed with? It's called Mormon Stories.
Okay.
And it's just all about people who leave Mormonism, and they talk about or people who leave Mormonism and the stories of people who leave Mormonism. I'm just so fascinated. I'm actually I'm talking to a comic now who grew up Jehovah's Witness. I can't wait to get him on.
Nice.
Another guy who grew up in a cult. Like, dude, I'm getting them all.
Beautiful.
I want to get.
I love it.
I love it. So what is your okay, I'm gonna a little bit kind of stray from my like typical thing because you're my buddy who I miss. How's your life right now, man?
Yeah. So, I got laid off in August with the rest of the creative team at Lagunitas, which, I was ready to move on. Like I did the work that I did. I got the portfolio piece, like, it's a big national craft beer brand, like, and I got to rebrand them, redesign their packaging. So I got exactly what I wanted out of that work. And now I'm just kind of in a spot figuring out what I want to do. Probably will just be freelance. I really like not having a boss or like someone expecting me to be at my desk. Obviously,
Which has been something you kind of, and this is something that kind of has always been you, even since you were a teenager. You were always kind of doing graphic design stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
For a while. You like had the best scam in the world going, where like, wasn't it that the Missionary Alliance was paying you $1,000 a month to like maintain their website?
Retainer. Yeah. And I was like, I did like nothing. Oh man, I would love to get a few more.
I was grinding as a waiter, and you're just like balling. Didn't have to do anything.
Yeah. If there are any other religious organizations out there that just would like to give me money and get nothing in return, call me.
Amazing.
Yeah. No, but so doing freelance. So I've falsely believed that having a full-time job was more stable, but those clearly can go away too. And I think the freelance thing, having a bunch of clients might actually have a little bit more stability built in. So if like one drops off, then I'm not like scrambling. Yeah. But going back to the church community thing, so I'm introverted. I recharge at home. I can be more kind of a hermit. So now like the idea of working only from home all the time is like, ooh, how am I gonna, like I missed when I was at Lagunitas and even at previous gigs, because I've always predominantly been employed, like I'd go into the office Tuesday and Thursday and I wouldn't get any work done, but we'd like have a drink and, give each other grief. And it was fun. Like the banter and that camaraderie I miss. So I'd love to figure out a way to have that. I think the working from home 24/7 thing is good for me, but I'm worried about it being too isolating. So I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, weren't you part of like an art collective or something like that? I feel
but COVID destroyed that. Yeah. And I live like so I'm in Sonoma County, Northern California. I love Sonoma County. I live in Santa Rosa, which is okay. Like it's not bad, but it's not like an urban environment where there's like lots of stuff happening and lots of people out and about. Like I went to Portland a few weeks ago for a few days, and oh man, like
you made it back alive.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was delightful. It was pretty clean, and it was like nice. There wasn't. Okay. It wasn't like what I imagined you expected it to be from whatever news sources you're hearing about.
It's not what Tucker Carlson has told me it is.
It's not. No, I mean, it's like, it was just like a normal city. But, people there were a lot of people out walking around. It was like, it's super pedestrian friendly. Santa Rosa is not that. So it's hard. It's like all retired people and like families. Like it's hard to have those more organic things in the community to just like get you to meet people. So that's kind of tricky.
Okay. I'm gonna ask you a sensitive question.
Do it.
Which is that I feel on Goodreads you gave a 5-star review for ethical polyamory.
Oh yeah. The ethical slut.
And I just, how is that not gross? Because I see it as gross.
So the ethical slut was kind of like the Bible, the original kind of like manifesto for like polyamory. And the reason why it's called the ethical slut is because, you know, we have this kind of view in society that if dudes fuck around, they're studs, but if women do, they're sluts. And so
you're all sluts to me.
That's fine. And I own my slutdom. But the idea is let's reclaim that word because, you know, a grown woman is able to make whatever choices she wants with her body and is not, you might disagree with them, but that doesn't make someone inherently dirty or inherently filthy. Anyway, yeah, it's a good book. You should read it. I think so. I think so. It's interesting. That book and another book, which is a little more contested now because the author turned out to be not so great. It's called More Than Two.
Oh no! Imagine my surprise that the author of The Ethical Slut is a dirtbag.
No, not the ethical. Another book called More Than Two.
Oh, I see.
But I mean,
whoa! More than two got a poo. That's the. Do you know that phrase?
No.
No. Oh yeah. If you fart twice, it probably means you got to take a dump.
Oh shit. Yeah. Just from my own experience, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
But anyway, but you know, I actually learned a lot about communication and boundaries and expectation setting that has nothing to do with like ethical non-monogamy from that book. So, you know, I think it's like the Bible. Like there's wisdom to be found all sorts of places. And I think there's a lot of value to be gained in intentionally seeking out stuff that is confusing or makes you uncomfortable because like, well, what in you is responding to that? Maybe there's something in you that is curious in a way that you're know, not willing to let yourself be.
Are you in a relationship?
Kind of.
Okay. What I really want to get to is like, what has it been like? So you're divorced. You're now a single guy. Like what is life been like dating for you as an older guy now, especially since you really didn't play the field at all in your youth?
No. So I was in a relationship for 4 years and it just recently ended on great terms. We just had different goals and relationship needs. It sucks, but it happens. And yeah, there are other people that I'm seeing. And I think part of it has been trying to figure out what I want, you know, it's like my marriage. It's like I became a heathen. My marriage ended. COVID happened. Like there has not been any like stable period where things have just been the same. It's been kind of like constant change. So for me, it's figuring out like what I do want. How do I want to relate to people? What kinds of relationships do I want in my life? What relationships can I sustain and show up for? I'm just all questions I'm trying to figure out right now.
Okay. Do you think you get married again?
Oh fuck no.
No. I mean, well, truthfully, I've thought about like, say, if I ever got divorced or something happened to Candace, like I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would want to put my kids through the experience of having like step parents. Not that my step parents are bad, but it's just such a like it's a weird dynamic to think about how you were married and say something happens but you still have kids and then you make a vow to put a new person first. That seems weird. That seems really weird to me. So I was curious about what you made of that in your current place.
You know, at some point I could see possibly being open to living with someone again. I don't know. I think I really do need my own domestic space. But marriage is like, marriage and love get conflated. Marriage is a legal agreement. It's a business arrangement, right? Like I have no interest in like entwining my finances and things with someone else again. That's really it. Not necessarily like I could see, depending on where I was in my life, having, you know, like a hand fasting ceremony or something where you're like, hey, we're in this is a I hate this expression, but this is like a ride or die relationship. Like this is like we're together, like we're doing
well, especially if you say it like that. Jeez Louis. For those watching, Ben is half black, but he is not is really not. I feel like I'm blacker than you.
You really are.
If I'm that's so funny. Okay. So long-term companionship not ruled out, but as far as like the formality of marriage, no. Okay.
Yeah. And it, you know, I've learned that it really is. society tells us so much things about relationships. So like we have this term called the relationship escalator, where it's like, well, you got to like date and get married and have kids, and you just do the thing. You just like take that trajectory that is expected that everyone goes on. And I am much more about letting relationships define themselves and being creative with them. Like someone's marriage doesn't have to look like someone else's marriage. Like I really struggle with labels and these kind of like putting things in tidy boxes. I'm much more a fan of the mess and nuance of having to figure it out and have those hard conversations and to like give yourself permission to do a hard thing if it doesn't make sense, whether it's like coming out or getting married. Like it could be whatever. But I think we need to define those things for ourselves. Yeah.
Before we move on to guitar stuff, I feel like this is a mutual interest of ours. I want to get your take on all the alien stuff.
Dude, okay, so first of all, the whole like Mexico thing was like so frustrating because it was clearly a hoax. Like, guys,
I mean,
what
like
are you doing?
the guy who put those out had already been accused and had done a hoax.
Yeah. So annoying. You know, I mean, this is another, I'm not super big conspiracy theory guy, but it's ridiculous to think that there's not intelligent life in the universe. Whether or not it's existed long enough and has the technology to visit us, I mean, that seems kind of far-fetched. But I'm certainly open. I mean, it's, who knows, man? Like there's only mystery out there, you know?
I really, sometimes I miss the hardline Ben who's got like, you know, firm thoughts and decisions. I thought I'd get more out of you on that one.
I mean, I have firm thoughts in certain areas, but I'm definitely a lot more open-minded.
So what do you think about Grutch?
What?
About David Grutch, the whistleblower. I thought you
don't
were
really
into
know
this.
much I'm not like I pay attention, but like I'm not like into it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I really thought this was going to have more legs.
Sorry, man. If you wanted, I mean, you could have prepped me. I could have like totally have gone down.
Well, no, if you were, no, that's fine. What do you want to talk about? Okay. Well, we could. First of all, I guess maybe this will be a good thing. Is what have been your thoughts from afar on me doing comedy?
Oh, you know, I remember being back. I don't even know. Probably in college, when you're figuring out what you were wanting to do, being like, hey, why don't you stick with the drama thing? Like you're just natural character and natural, like that's just like obviously a skill that you have, whether or not it's like being on stage or commercials or an MC of some kind. Like clearly you have this skill set that should be used. You getting into comedy, I'm super in support of. I think everyone should have a creative outlet. I think, you know, most people who say, oh, I'm not an artist, I'm not creative, they're just like repeating what the people in their lives have told them about themselves, or repeating their own insecurity, or just like leaning into the fact that they haven't had enough curiosity to figure out what their thing is. I think human intelligence is predicated on creativity. Like we can't do any of this without being creative. And I think everyone has something in them that needs to be expressed. It looks different for everyone. And so you tapping into that and finding a place to express, a place to be activated, to be looking for inspiration, to turning that inspiration into something is super important. So I'm in like full support of you doing it, with the only caveat that I think, you know, it's really easy to be, I think, especially if you're leaning more to the shock side, there's a fine line between being like gratuitous and really like having something to say when it comes to like dealing with race or like sexuality or any of that stuff. So I think like finding the nuance there is important. But yeah, no, I think it's great. I think you should keep going and not stop.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the first year, I think I wrestled with quitting like every day.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was really hard. And and to what you were saying, that's definitely a thing within like comedy that I see is there's the spectrum of like, you've got what I call the safe space comics, who I think a lot of times will say something that will generate agreement and clapter. as it's called.
Yeah.
And in replace of, because true comedy is, or a joke is surprise. That I feel like that's the real essence, is saying something that you didn't expect to be said, and then saying something that people agree with for a response. But then the other thing is that what I call the troll guys or the edgelords,
Right.
is replacing surprise with shock.
Right.
And so but I mean, there's a great comedy joke writing book called Playfully Inappropriate, and basically what you want to do is say the most exaggerated, inappropriate thing you can get away with. But if you go too inappropriate, well, then it's not funny at all. But I think the beauty of comedy and art in general is that it's exaggeration. Right? Like Candace and I were listening to a song on the weekend. I can't remember what it was, but it was like like when you have got a love song. This guy would die for you. I would do all these things. It's like, I don't know if I'd do that, but like, that's what art is that exaggeration.
Totally.
Did you watch that? I can't remember what it's called. That documentary on Netflix about Zukalski, the sculptor.
No.
Oh, you should watch it. Yeah. I'll send it to you, but it's about a sculptor named Zukalski who's Polish. And he very eccentric,
I
crazy.
I don't watch it. Nothing with Poles. Not a chance.
And what he says is, like, if you're gonna make somebody bending back, like, you break their back, like when he sculpts them, right? Like, and the go-to is the extreme as possible. And I try to think like that. And he always says, like, if you're an artist, you like one of the people they interview in the documentary is like an artist who would just make like circles or patterns or something like that. And Zukalski's comment to her was like, you're not saying something. You need to say something. And he's like, if you've got something to say, then you'll be an artist. That's what it means. Anyway, I think you'll love it. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, that sounds great. I respond to that. Something get very excited about creatively in my personal life are contrasts. Like, and the interplay between contrasts. So like finding opposite things or finding unrelated things, and seeing how those things like intensify each other, like what happens at the edges. So, I think that's great. Like finding that sweet spot where you're able to, have, balance the shock with the expected. Yeah. I think that whole exercise is super interesting. When you're writing jokes, do you get into the flow state? Is that a flow thing? Or is it like, are you just like banging your head against the wall?
It can be both. I think sometimes if you're really trying to force something, and like I have like a host of kind of devices and mechanics that I use to try to generate punchlines, and sometimes it just doesn't work. But
I'd actually love to see those. I'm so curious about like creative process and like tools to like get out of blocks or to. Oh
yeah, I mean, well, I could tell you. So I've read a lot of comedy books. So I could tell you like one. There's a guy named Greg Dean who wrote a book called Step by Step Stand Up Comedy, and he's got a really great device for generating material, which is that if you like, it starts mechanical. It doesn't. You never start in flow state, right? You start with, and that's the hardest part for me is I'm never concerned with performance. I'm never concerned with how I'm going to deliver something, my tone of voice, or how I'm going to do it, or the pauses. I never
that's just
worry
all
about
intuitive
that.
For
that's
you.
just intuitive and natural for me. For me, it's writing. It's generating material and stuff that I'm happy and excited to be talking about. And so what he says is like, if you pick your topic, and a topic is different than a category, right? Like you can't just say sports, right? That's a category. Like you need to pick like a sport, right? And so his strategy is like list everything you can, because all the jokes are in the nuance, and list everything you can about it. I'll give you an example of it. Is say you're doing a roast and you're roasting. I'm going to use you as an example because you fit my example, which is that. So I'm roasting Ben. Ben is bald, right? So Ben has. So that's like so. You pick an item from your list, Ben's bald, and then you give it a negative connotation. So Ben's bald is already kind of negative. And so that's your...
Nice. You just did it. You're doing it live. This is great.
But so what you do is you have... So that's an item on your list. That's a negative slant. That becomes your punchline premise. And then you flip it and make it the opposite to create your setup premise. So the setup premise is Ben is not bald. So, and a setup premise is not the setup. You need to re-express it using specificity or nuance or something like that. And so I would say, I would rephrase the setup premise. I would say, Ben's got a full head of hair. He keeps it in a bag at his desk.
Beautiful.
Right. And so through the mechanical,
you can't see that on camera though. Like, how did you know that?
So through doing it mechanically, you start to generate jokes. Like, I know I'm in flow state when I'm laughing to myself, because when I hear the joke in my mind, I think it's funny. Right. Because it's like, I heard it for the first time too.
Right.
Like, right. When the idea springs into your head. And it's so funny because, so much of our relationship early on was like me feeling so intimidated by you and your giftings. Like this fucking guy, he's going to make an album and he's so good at guitar and blah, blah, blah. Like, and like I saw you as a real artist, and at the same time I felt in myself like, I've got that in me, but I don't know what it was, because I thought it was music for so long and I didn't think I had anything. Oh, yours says EOS webcam.
Sorry,
utility.
1 sec. I gotta replace camera batteries. Just give me a sec.
Yeah.
Are we back?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. So it's funny you say that, and it makes me super uncomfortable. But here's the thing, because it comes up, right? Like, I do a bunch of stuff. My gift, my strength, I have two strengths. My one strength is I am completely comfortable asking the question, why not? So, for example, there's a perfume I really liked, that Lacoste cologne.
Yes.
And it got discontinued. And so part of me felt like someone was dying, like that I don't get to smell this thing again.
Yeah.
So my response was like, well, how hard is it to make cologne? Like, just asking the question.
Oh yeah, and you did do that.
Yeah.
You sent them to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable just being like, I don't know anything, but neither did anyone else who started this. So I asked myself that question, like, why not? I'll get some materials and fuck around. Like, maybe it'll be terrible, but maybe it won't be. So I'm curious about a lot of things, and I ask why not about a lot of things. And then I'm like really stubborn and competitive. So I'll just like keep being shitty until I'm like a little bit less shitty. That's really it. And this is like, to go back to talking about creativity, I think a lot more people can do a lot more things than they give themselves credit for. What it takes is permission
100%.
to go, why not? And when it's hard, maybe I'll keep going just a little bit more and see where I can get. Yeah, I think everybody sells themselves short.
Yeah, I think I sold myself short for a long time. And then it was like, when it came to comedy, it was eventually, and it's so funny you say that, because what I said to myself is, why not me?
Totally.
Why not me? Why not? Why can't I be
question.
the one? Right? Yeah. And it's but it was just, music was never the thing. It was like, it's so funny because it's like, I always made jokes. That was always what I did. It was always what I did.
The whole time.
I wrecked the dance at your wedding because I was making jokes.
You fucked up a lot of things with your jokes.
It's true.
It's okay though. It's okay. You got to make a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's interesting. Okay. So we'll wrap up with this one, which is, give us a few years ago, or is it several years ago now, you duped the entire guitar internet by creating the Strymon parallax. You
The
asked
whole internet.
me.
I know everyone watching this knows it made national news. It was such a big story.
I'm going to clip this and I'm going to put it on the Gear page, and those fuckers will watch it.
Yeah,
they want to know what. So. Tell me more of the story about the parallax, because so first of all, your render was amazing. You said you whispered to me, hey, just say you found this on Reddit or something like that. So I did, and it fucking blew up to the point where Strymon had to actually address it. Yeah,
I love that. Whoops, sorry guys. So I've always enjoyed like web forums, especially around interests like gear, recording music, recording equipment, guitar. So there's just it's like a locker room kind of vibe, just like a lot of like shit talking and like and general fuckery. But I had done one little kind of like mock up for something for fun, and I actually had a reason for making this image. I wanted to improve my photorealistic 3D modeling and rendering skills. Like, this is something I use in my job, usually for like product visualization or architectural visualization. predominantly do a lot of most of my design work now is packaging design. So for like, for beer and spirits, and I do a lot of the renderings for those products because like they haven't been printed yet and I don't have that bottle. So I got to do a 3D render. So it's important to my career. And I used that as just an exercise as like, well, I have this, I don't have it around. Hold on a second. This isn't Strymon, but like had, like a guitar pedal. So I wanted to, like model like it's blurry, but the knobs and the switches and just like figure out how to emulate those materials in a realistic way. So it was mostly just an exercise, but I'm like, well, let's have some fun and mess around with some people at the same time. And I actually ended up getting a job out of it. There's a company in Denmark called Relab, and they make audio software. They make like high-end reverbs and things. Mm-hmm. I've been doing work for them for years now because he's like saw the rendering and he's like, I need you to do that for our product.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And which it was not the goal, but certainly I'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Were you surprised that I sold all my stuff?
No, because you've always been non-monogamous with your music gear. Right.
Well, I just mean got out of it altogether.
Do you not have anything?
I've got my Les Paul, I've got my Taylor, and that's it.
Do you have a Helix or something?
Sold it.
What do you plug into?
I have a Boss Katana.
What?
Yeah, I don't know.
What
that's
happened
it.
to you?
And it's in a closet. Dude, at the moment. And my
so
Les
sad.
Paul is tuned down to A standard.
Okay,
so I can play Knock Loose.
Beautiful. But like I'm shocked. You had some pretty, doesn't it just bring you joy just to see these things around?
It does, but they're also distractions.
Okay, so really you wanted to put your focus predominantly in comedy and really like streamline.
Oh yeah. When I knew that I was going to do comedy, I wrote like a long letter to like email to the worship pastor at the church to say like, I'm done. Like there's no, like, I'm not going to do this a little. Like I knew when I did if I was going to do comedy, I was going to do it all the way. For some reason, I just knew that it was the thing. It was the thing that I had been running away from for so long. I think it was, a part of me was genuinely afraid to do it because like when you're like, not to toot my own horn, like I was the funniest guy of the group. And like when your identity is based on being the funny guy, not being funny or failing at being funny, it's like, it doesn't just hit. It's not just about like not doing well at stand up. You feel it's a statement about you as a person. And I think that I was afraid to face that for a long time.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, if your whole identity is kind of hanging on this one quality and the world is like, you actually don't have that quality. Like, well, then just going to crawl into a hole and die then. Yeah. That focus is important. I, like that's something I struggle with is casting too wide a net. Like I get fascinated and hyperfixate a lot of different things, but have been learning, and even my career, just like do web design and this and that. Focusing is really important, and it's been nice to find a way to focus a little bit more than I had previously. I think it is paying off.
Well, we are over an hour now, which is what I wanted to do. Thanks for
Did you get anything you didn't get? Like, did you want to like circle back to anything or
no? Unless there was something.
Do you want me to Google aliens real quick and just like give you the soundbite there?
No, that's good. Honestly, I just I gotta say, like, I love you, man. I miss you a lot.
Ditto,
man. I wish you were here more. And but I'll settle for this. And it was really.